Hello everyone, this is Sunita Verma, and in this channel we talk everything ISO and compliance. So we talk with any prospect or an existing client during the engagement. What they generally discuss with me is what hurts them the most. Everybody's mind in their team as they try to get on people and the stakeholders onboarded with the idea. So let's start discussing these pain points. Confidential information being compromised. Will our internal or external, meaning the client confidential information, need to be shared as part of the certification process? This includes anything to do with any confidential product, service related, or any client sensitive data, also employee sensitive data, or some of the weaknesses within the organization. Next pain point is around resource constraint. I know I have felt it within my organization, and everybody is going through a lot of issues in hiring and supporting the resources. So generally, what I hear from the clients as well as all the prospect is limitations in terms of back office support. This is the core group that supports any project. Dedicated resources working on ongoing project, meaning your operators, project managers are working on existing projects, and they worry about having a certain expertise to understand and implement ISO and compliance standards. The next constraint is around management and maintenance of multiple standards over time. So whether you're taking one standard or you're going after multiple standards, you still have to go through ISO audits. There are annual internal audit and annual external audits, and every 3 years you go through a recertification audit. So basically, hiring full-time resource is one of the options people think they have to do to maintain and manage these systems. Some of the frustrations that I hear from the business owners are around I will lose control of my process and visibility. The process owner will document the process and do as they like. This will adversely impact me. My employees will not be able to comply and leave my business. This will take a lot of time and not enough people to delegate. What if I do all the work and see no return on investment? Very reasonable frustrations that come out. Some of my clients, they have been very candid in this. What if that goes through everybody's head? So this is, I cannot make time for additional work. My team has not been exposed to ISO and will not be able to follow. What will it take to maintain ISO even if I buy? What if it takes me longer to implement? Will I receive no support? What happens next year? Is there support I can expect? So to recap all the pain points and answer the questions here, let me start with the confidential information. So for the confidential information, the solution is to redact the information and that is confidential and be prepared. I often do that. Anything that is sensitive, like the numbers, any specific deliverable that is called out, any client information, anything that is PII, PHI, I remove that information and have my evidences ready for an audit or in a folder which I use to show in the audit. That way, I'm not compromising something. Secondly, ISO also allows for verbal affirmations, verbal evidences to reconfirm and talk through to the auditors. Thirdly, one thing I have always understood, and I've seen people struggle with it to understand, auditors may request some things if something is confidential and cannot be shared, like a risk management or your SWOT analysis, which identifies the weaknesses, or your asset related risk tracking, or something that's critical to you. It's not required that you share or you send a list to them. You can share your screen and show it to them. That way you are not, if there is not endpoint protections, you're not compromising any details. The next concern was around the resource constraint and the management and maintenance. And I like to always address these two pinpoints together. So let's go with the first part, resource constraint. Now, the way I address these pain points is by keeping, my advice always is to keep the documentation simple and to the extent necessary. What that does for you is if the documentation is simple to the extent necessary, People will be able to follow easily. You're not over documented, meaning that reduces the time from the internal audit standpoint, the external audit standpoint. And the maintenance and management over time becomes easier. A heavy system is harder to manage because every year you have to do annual review of the documentation. And all of that has to be audited within 3-year timeframes. Also, simple system take, as I mentioned, they take the less time to audit, and you can always hire external consultants or contractors to do the audits, the internal audits. Do the internal review, the recurring stakeholder requirements, and start the process early on. What that will do for you is the what ifs and some of the pain point associated is the budget constraints. That will be addressed, meaning if you start your process early and are not rushed, you won't pay any expedited fee and you won't be rushing your stakeholders, employees to be very specific when they have to document the processes. Allow them enough time and set them up for success. One of the what if is around if the system is documented, I'll lose my people, there will not be transparency. So let's debunk this. ISO is about process as you follow them. That has to be documented. So once you have a process that is documented, there it will make the process more transparent and you can hold people accountable. ISO is not a system wherein you're setting people up for failure. It's for setting people for success because if you have a documented process, you can have that repeated. And one last pointer is ISO is not to fire people. It's used to empower people and have there be an ownership as opposed to try to fire people here. So with that, if you have any more pain points that you want me to discuss, please let me know. Thank you much for your time. We'll see you again.